Hello and welcome everyone to today's tutorial on learning C++ from the scratch. In today's tutorial, we are going to talk about the if condition in C++. So what is if condition and why do we need to use it? Well, an if condition is used to control the flow of a program by executing only a certain code when a specific condition is true. So, like currently at this moment, we cannot control the flow of our program, where every code that we write in our file will be executed. But using the if condition, we can only run a specific code and cancel another part of the code depending on a specific condition. And this condition, most of the time, depend on the user input. Like, let me give you an example. Imagine that we have a user, and our user wants to use our system to create a bank account. Here, we are going to ask our user. Our system will ask how old is he or she. And depending on his answer, we can respond with two different answers or block of code. The first situation, if he said that he is bigger than 18 years old, which means he is an adult. If he said that, for example, he is 19 years old, in this case, we may allow him to proceed to create his account, his bank account, by filling a form and maybe submitting his ID. Otherwise, else, if the condition of him bigger than 18 is false, which means he is less than 18, maybe he is 16 years old or 13 years old, in this case, our program will do different thing and told him that he cannot create his account because he is not old enough. Or maybe we can ask him to come with a guardian so that we can create a bank account for him. So we can do this normally with normal coding, but using the if condition, we can do that. So if condition can create a two-way in our program where you can. It's not just a two-way, maybe it can have 3 or 4 or 5-way, but we will only start with two-way to get the idea in its simplest form. So you can say that, depending on the situation, our user might trigger the first block of the code over here and cancel the other block of code over here. Well, if the condition is true, he is going to trigger the code in this route. Otherwise, if the condition is false, this route is going to be cancelled and the other route or the other block of code is going to be triggered and will run the code inside it. So let's go to an example so that we can get the idea in a better way. Okay, first of all, we need to take the user input because depending on the user input, as we said before, we are going to choose which route are we going to run and which route or block of program are we going to ignore, as we said before in our previous example. As you can see over here, where if our user write that they are 18 years old or bigger, we are going to run this block of code where we are going to create his bank account. Otherwise, we are going to ignore this block of code if he write that he is less than 18. We are going to cancel this block of code and instead run this block of code where we said, sorry, you are not old enough. So, to take the user input, we first need to create a variable. And what we are going to store in this variable is the user age. And user age is a number. So our variable type will be integer, int. Now, we can give it any name we want. I'm going to name it age. And now we can display a message to our user telling them that we want them to enter their name. So we are going to use the cout. Now, to take the input from our user, we are going to use the cin instruction and store our user input in this variable over here, which is called age. So that's the first step. Now the second step is to check whether the user entered an age bigger than 18 or less than 18. And here we are going to start using the if condition, where if condition is a way that allow us to check the user input or any condition, and depending on the condition, if it is true, we are going to choose a path and cancel another path. Otherwise, we are going to cancel the another path and choose maybe different path. So how can we use the if condition? Well, simply, we just need to type if and then open a bracket and then open a curly bracket. So you can say that this curly bracket and what's inside it is the first root in our program, like the root over here. Everything inside the curly bracket is the code in this root or in this part of our program. Then we can say else. Now we have another curly bracket over here. This another curly bracket is the second path. This path over here. Or in the previous image, this path over here. So only one of them are going to run and the other will be cancelled depending on the user input. So how can we check if our user input is bigger than 18 or not? Well, we can check that inside this bracket beside the if condition. We can write here the variable that we want to check. In this case, it will be the age. And then check if it is bigger than 18 or not. So I would say here, bigger sign 17. Where in this case, it is going to check if the user is bigger than 18 or not. Well, why did we set 17 instead of 18? Well, because when we say age is bigger than 18, it is going to check if it is bigger than 18. Which is, in this case, it will be 19, 20, 21, and so on. And 18 will not be in the range that we want to check. But we want the 18 to be in the range of what we want to check. So instead of saying 18, we can say 17. Well, now, 18 will be also included in our condition. Now, if the user age is bigger than 17, we are going to run the code inside this curly bracket, which in this case, we are going to say, please fill the form to create your bank account. So this is the first root. But otherwise, if the user is not bigger than 18, which means he is less than 18, we are going to create another root that tell the user that they cannot create their bank account because they are not old enough. Which is, in this case, we are going to say here, say out, sorry, you are not old enough. Now let's try to run our program and check it. Now, we are in this part of our program where we are trying to tell the user to enter their name. And we are waiting for them to enter, their age. And we are now waiting for them to enter their age. And if we entered 19 years old and then press enter, our program will proceed to the next step where we're going to ask them to fill the form so that we can create their bank account. As you can see over here, this is like the first root in our program. This part is our first root where we are going to ask them to fill the form because they enter an age bigger than 18. But otherwise, if we enter an age less than 18, like for example, 17, we are going to tell them, sorry, you are not old enough. So in this case, this message wasn't displayed, but instead, the second root message was the one who displayed to our user. So that's how we can use the if condition in C++ and run a specific code and cancel the other part depending on a specific condition. Okay, let's talk more about how we can check the variable stored inside our variable using this relational operator. Like in the previous example, we talked about this bigger than sign, and this bigger than sign is checking is the number stored in the age variable bigger than 17? which means it is only checking if the number exists inside the age is 18, 19, 20, or 21, and so on. 17 in this case is excluded because 17 is not bigger than 17. 17 is equal to 17, but what we are checking here is the number that are bigger than 17. But actually we have another relational operator that we can use, which is in this case called bigger than or equal, which in this case it is checking if the number stored inside the age variable is 17 or higher, which could be 18, 19, 20, and so on. So in this case 17 is included, but before 17 in this case was not included but excluded instead. So if we want to include the number that are on the right side, we are going to put an equal sign beside the bigger than sign. Also, we have another relational operator which we call less than, where in this case instead of checking if the number stored inside the age variable is bigger than 17, we are checking if the number stored inside the age variable is less than 17, which could be 16, 15, 14, 13, and so on. And in this case, of course, 17 is excluded. It's not included because we are only checking numbers that are less than 17, not equal to 17 as well. But we can also do the same thing and add the equal sign over here, and this will include the 17 inside the range that we are checking inside the variable. Also, we have another relational operator which is called equal or equal. This case is not like checking a range of number. We are only checking if the age is storing exactly 17. And finally, we have another relational operator which we call not equal, where in this case we are checking if the number stored in the age is not 17. So it could be 16, 15, 14, 13, or 18 and 19, and in this case it will be true. But if the number stored inside the age variable is equal to 17, in this case our condition will be false and our program will choose the second route, which is the else block that we talked before. So we have the sixth relational operator, or some might call it comparison operator. We call it relational because we check the relation between a variable and a number. It's like the number bigger than or smaller than or equal to the number stored inside the variable. And some call it comparison because we compare, is the number stored inside the variable bigger than or less than, and so on. And as we discussed before, we have this bigger than sign, bigger than or equal, less than or equal, is equal, and is not equal. Finally, we said before that the first root of our program is what's inside this curly bracket over here. And the second root is what inside this curly bracket over here. Now, the question is this curly bracket, this one, the open curly bracket and the closed one, necessary or not? Well, actually, and it depends on the code that we are trying to run in each root. Where if we are only trying to run a one line of code, this one is only one line of code in the first root, then we don't need this curly bracket over here. And this also have only one line of code, so we also don't need this curly bracket over here. And if you try to run our program, it will work fine. So if we said like 16, sorry you're not old enough, and if we try 19, please fill the form. So there will be no problem if we didn't open and close a curly bracket if there's only one line in each root of our program. But if we have more than one line in a specific root, then we need to open a curly bracket. For example, let's add another line of code here, just as an example, and say cout, please upload your ID. And now, like if we run this program like we did before, it will not cause any problem. Like if we write 19, it will work fine. because our program can know that this is the start point of our first root and this is the end point of our first root, and everything inside this curly bracket it belongs to the first root. But if we delete the curly bracket in this case, like we did before, now our program will only think that the first line over here is what belongs to the first root, and the second line will not belong to the second root anymore. And in this case, our program will throw an error, because if and else are always connected and cannot be separated. And when like the program thinks that the second line is not belong to the first root anymore, we separated the if and else and they are not connected anymore. So if we try to run our program, else throw an error. And as you can see here, else without the previous if. That's the error, because now else can see which if is it connected to. Because what it can see is that it have a curly bracket like this, and the if condition have a curly bracket from here until here only, where this is the first root of our program, but the second cout does not belong to the first root of our program anymore. Well, so like if we try to run our program again, you will see that it will throw the same error, as you can see over here, because cout separated between the if and the else and disconnect them. We can change the close position of the curly bracket and close it here instead. So now our program can know that all of the codes that are inside this curly bracket are belong to the first root, and we didn't disconnect the else and if anymore. And if we try to run our program, it will work fine. So that's all for today's tutorial. Thank you very much for watching and see you next time.